Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Great honor to introduce Senator Elizabeth Warren, our illustrious senator.
Thank you.
And our other guests, State Rep Jim Hawkins, State Rep Carol Doherty, our State Senator Paul Feeney, and our Mayor, Catherine. So I'm just going to
I'm
turn it
going to
over
say
to...
that Senator Warren's staff is going to have it easy now that she's here. I've been asking this. Now they've got nothing to do. Their life is going to get much easier.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. And I've explained that you're here not like a normal political visit, but you're here to listen to people's stories. So that should be the framework of the conversation. This is about all of you. And we've chosen some representatives both from Sandcastle here in Attleboro and Rocky Knoll, sorry. A couple years from now, I'll know the name. Rocky Knoll from Taunton, who've been very vocal in supporting our legislation to address this.
Liberty Estates.
And Liberty Estates, yes. We had no trouble finding people in these parks who are very vocal for working with us to get something done.
Let me start by saying I appreciate your being here. Two issues that I've been working on for years now. One is around private equity and the notion that private equity moves in one industry after another and buys up, raises prices, reduces service, rakes out a bunch of profits, and then moves on to eat the next industry. We're watching this, for example, in the nursing home industry, watching it in buying up medical practices. They've already mowed their way through lots of retail outlets. Some of you may remember Toys R Us, right? Other stores that were once good stores that got eaten up and sold for parts. So I've been working at the federal level to put more constraints on private equity, more transparency, and force the people who want to come in and purchase in an industry to have more skin in the game and not be able to just take advantage, suck out whatever value's there, and then leave dust behind. Another issue I've been working on for a long time is housing. We don't have enough housing. We don't have enough in Massachusetts. We don't have enough anywhere in the country. We need more housing, and we need more housing of every kind. We need more housing for seniors. We need more housing for first-time home buyers. We need more rental housing. We need more ownership housing. We need housing for people with disabilities. We need to make more investments in housing. I wanted to be here this morning because these two things that I've worked on intersect right here in Attleboro. And that is private equity swooping in and actually making it harder for people to hang on to the security of their homes. So, as Jim said, and I appreciate Jim's good work on this, very much appreciate Carol's work on this, Paul's work, but I'm here today because I want to hear, and the reason I want to hear, we were talking about the gentleman and I back in the corner, it helps me to have stories because when I go back to Washington and want to try to get changes in the law, it helps when I can say, here are people, and this is directly how they are affected. It also helps, in this case, I think, because Jim, as you know, has a bill in the state legislature that he's trying to advance. And the best way to persuade our legislative colleagues is if we can tell these stories in a way that more of them hear and more of them will come on board to make the changes. So that's it. That's why I'm here today.
Would you like to hear some of the specific history about,
Absolutely.
About the acquisition of this park?
I want to hear what you think I should hear.
I can go into
Good.
I'd go into that first, and then if we can hear some individual stories.
Joe is president of the Tenants
Yeah.
Association, and he's the first one who reached out to me in 2018, 2019, a long time ago.
At least 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And Joe was helpful to us when I raised actually this particular development at a hearing down in Washington in 2022. So trying to push this. I talked about Sandcastle in DC, but I need more.
We went to, we were acquired by a company called Legacy Communities.
Yeah.
And the original acquisition offer was 2018. I'll say January, in that time frame. They offered 13.3 million. And we have the right to match their offer, we being the residents. So we did vote initially that yes, we want to attempt to match the offer. You then have 90 days to see if you can actually get the funding. And at that time, we could not get funding for 13.3. I mean, we have some money, but we don't have millions sitting in our account. So we would have to get a mortgage for 100% of the cost of the acquisition price, plus set aside extra funds. So we could have gotten a mortgage in the 8 to 10 million range, because that was the estimated market value. Mm-hmm. So we had to turn it down, and then in January 2019, they actually made the acquisition. And one thing they did was they immediately raised the rent on around 100 residents who had expired leases. We previously had 5-year leases, but as they expired, the previous owner didn't renew them. So those people got immediate rent increases of, it was like from $50 to $100 a month, with like not even 30 days notice. And they then sent us all 5-year leases with rent increases of up to 5% or CPI, whichever is higher. So we've been getting 5%, 5%. The last couple years, it's been higher because of the CPI. So in the 4 years they've owned us, the rents have gone from, I'll say, the 400 to 500 range. We're now at 718. Wow. So it's at least a 40% increase. Some people have had more than a 75% increase in 4 years. What happened subsequent to that, 3 years later, they received an offer to buy the park, not for 13 million, I believe it was 18.8. And it turns out that it was a company that another large conglomerate or partnership, LLC, and Legacy was actually involved in that. It was just a larger group of those companies. Mm-hmm. So once again, we had the opportunity to match the offer. This time, this would have been in the fall of 21. We actually were able, at that point, to get a mortgage of around, it would have been around $21 million. It would have been enough to pay off what the purchase price, and also we would have had to set aside about $2 million for short-term capital, a capital improvement fund, some extra money because in case there were any other kinds of issues. So, in order to come up with that much money, we would have had to immediately raise the rent from the 600 range immediately to $1,000 a month. So the residents turned it down. So what we're ending up with, it turns out it's the exact same management committee. It's they now call themselves Boston Sandcastle, but it's the same group of people who own us. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the story. Maybe we should have some other people.
Can I just ask one other question?
Sure.
When the rents went up, did they improve services? Did they do a lot of capital improvements?
One thing they do, and we had heard this, and it turned out to be true, this company, Legacy, they will spend $500,000 to $1 million initially. And they actually did, I don't know the exact amount, but they did completely modernize this particular building. So it's like it is like about 1,000% better than it was. It was really, you know, it had these worn, stale carpeting that a lot of people couldn't even come in here because the smell was so bad. So they did this all over. They totally redid the kitchen, did some things outside. So we had heard that they do that initially. Then after that, they won't do much of anything at all, which we have proven to be true. Now it takes them forever to do some simple maintenance jobs. So, and there's very little park management. We only have a 1 day a week park manager and a 20-hour-a-week maintenance guy. So the services have slipped. They're very nice. We talk to them all the time and tell them the issues, but it takes them forever to get anything done.
Thank you.
Another thing that I wanted to mention, another thing they do, is when they bought the park, this park was on the books of Attleboro. It was assessed at $3 million. The city reassessed it immediately to 12.4. They have since reduced it down to about 9.8. But what Legacy does is they charge us the property tax on that base amount of 2.9 is included in our monthly rent, standard rent. The property tax on anything above that figure, they charge it to us as an extra charge, which has run from, I think the first year it was like 40 a month. Now it's, what is it, 57?
57, 54, something like
a
that.
month that we're paying now on top of that because of that increase in the assessed value of the city. And I've actually spoken to a couple of lawyers about that, and they think that it is in accordance with the Attorney General's guide, right? That it is
So they
acceptable.
pay that on top of the...
We pay that on top of our...
Top of the increased assessment plus the tax.
Correct. Yeah, yes. And they adjust that up or down every year depending upon whether the assessed value goes up or down. So that's another thing I wanted to point out. It's one of my pet peeves. I don't know where to go with that as it appears to be legal, but it seems like this could go on forever, which doesn't seem right, but not sure where to go.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Okay, so Paul, I see you.
Yeah, I'll throw in something that, to add to what Joe said about responsiveness and how we deal with the park manager. And I feel somewhat have some empathy with her. She's here 1 day a week, 6 parks to manage, or 5.
Wow.
That's, to me, unreasonable. However, that's not necessarily the community's issue. We have a difficult time, as Joe mentioned, getting things done. We have formed a committee with Joe as part of IAM and the treasurer, Jim Turcott. And we meet with her, we try once a month, and here's a list, could you help us out and get these? Some things have been. But when Joe is going to kill me for this, I think. When you have park lights out for over a year, that's totally unreasonable. I mean, that's a major one. We have gotten most of them done. We still have 2. And I say that because one of our residents came out her front door and confronted a coyote in the dark. That's totally unacceptable in our opinion. We have other things underneath our units. They're supported by either cinder blocks or by bricks. Could you fix this because it's eroding and crumbling? No response. So we try to focus on those safety and critical issues. And it's frustrating when you get silence or you get no response. So I'm sure there are others that have similar situations they would like to mention.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Maybe we could hear from one of the other parks.
Jeannie from Roundtable Estates in Taunton. We have 158 units in the park. In Taunton, there are 7 mobile home, manufactured home parks, and 5 of them are 55 plus. And every one of them is going through the same thing that we're all going through. Companies there's 2 of them that are resident-owned, and the rest of them are large corporations. And they've been bought out over the last few years. People that have just been bought out are like, oh, it's great, they're doing this. Legacy is one in there. And they're like, no, we don't have any complaints. And their rent has gone up. In the last 2 years, it went up $50 the first year, $40 the second year, and now they're looking at another increase. These people, it's like, you can't do that to people. You know, our incomes haven't gone up. And we have the same things as far as they buy the property, they increase the rents, their maintenance kind of slides, they don't do stuff. And then it shows up as a capital expense later on because it's a big project now. So we absorb it, and we pay, we pay all the pass-throughs, we pay for water, sewer, we pay base rent, which covers operating expenses, salaries, insurance and stuff. And then we also pay the water and sewer, real estate taxes, a licensing fee for each unit, and capital expenses. And our rent's gone, when we moved in 10 years ago, it was $400, and it's $695 now. And we're retired. Our income has not gone up. It's, so and we're one of the, we don't have any amenities. We have a clubhouse that's, we're so envious of this. It's like a little car by farm, basically, and it was just reopened. We had to file a lawsuit. We had a class action lawsuit against the park to get the clubhouse open. Just to get the clubhouse open, it was closed when my husband and I moved in 10 years ago. We were told there's a clubhouse, and it's advertised as a clubhouse, but we were never allowed in it. And then they said, well, you have to bring it up to ADA compliance. But every month they've charged us rent. They've charged us as part of our rent to have a clubhouse, and it's in our lease. So we finally filed a lawsuit. It was open this July, minimally. It's right now it's open like 9 to 3, 5 days a week. So people who work still don't get use of it. And it's not. We have a kitchen that there's a microwave in the kitchen. We're not allowed any personal appliances. We can't have a coffee pot. If we want to have a dinner, we can't bring the crock pots in and plug stuff in. We have a microwave. That's it. So
Very stringent rules right now,
yeah,
which we're working on.
Yeah, and it's we've seen progress, but we've also seen the park go down in looks. When we moved in again, it was a beautiful park. People drive in and say it's like a Thomas Kincaid painting or Norman Rockwell place, and the roads are all pitted and cracked, and there's grass growing up through them, and there's very little maintenance being done.
Just to add to what you were saying, I've lived there 4 years. My mom's been there over 30 years, and I live with my mom. We're lucky, the 2 of us, because we have pensions. I'm a retired teacher. She was married to a retired policeman. We're lucky because we have the pensions. There are people who live very close by me that have Social Security, and that's it.
Right.
And they get, I talked to a lady a couple of years ago, she was getting $1,000 a month. And I'm like, how can you pay the rent and still survive? And she has heat assistance, she has food assistance, she has all these things that you shouldn't have to worry about when you're retired. You come to these types of places to enjoy community, getting together with people, and you shouldn't have to worry about feeding yourself. So we're looking even in the clubhouse of putting in like a food pantry. Just helping our people out because it's becoming. Insurance is huge. People get insurance. It's doubled. It's something. People are struggling so bad. And I know people are struggling everywhere, but younger people, and I hate to say this, but younger people have kids, they could go out and get 2 or 3 jobs. I mean, I work 2 jobs. You struggle, but you have the ability to go out and work other jobs. We don't have, we just don't have that anymore, and to see people struggling and to worry about the future, it's like, what are we going to do? And the response, unfortunately, the response from the community is we're not a charity case. If you can't afford it, can't move. And that's there's no... you can't afford it, move.
Yeah, there's no sympathy, there's no...
I have to say, these women have not sat idly by, much like you have not. and have been very much engaged in advocating in their own defense as well as the rest of the residents of the park. And perhaps Jeannie a little later can talk about their initiative to go to our city council and to ask them for support in many different ways. And so this thing is moving forward, and I think that activity surprises the management. These are not, we're not a whole bunch of old people not knowing what to do, but very active in their lives. So.
It's a very good point, Carol. Baby, you're in Massachusetts now.
If I may say, every year our rent goes up in June. June 1st is the date when the increase is going to take place. And shortly after the folks get that letter, you see the for sale signs. Now those individuals have to move in with their children, go to an assisted living, in some cases go to a nursing home if they can't really care 100% for themselves. It's heart-wrenching. I mean, because they're our friends. That's our community. You know, to talk about maintenance, I moved in 2011, and I'm still waiting for the second coat of asphalt on the street where I live. They just don't care. They don't do maintenance like they should.
Their response is, that's going to cost you money if you do that.
That's going to be a capital expense.
Whatever you ask for. Yeah.
You know, whatever it is. And with medication prices, for me personally, I'm by myself. With medication prices, with food prices, with insurance prices, you know, I don't know how much longer my money that I put aside when I was working is going to last. So eventually I'm going to be one of those for sale sign people. You know, it's scary. It's scary for the residents.
And it's scary it's amazing to see how many people have stepped up for this. So many are afraid of retaliation. Just that idea that, you know, if I raise my voice, if I do something, if I say something, the retaliation, they're scared they're going to be evicted, they're scared they're going to be, you know, just trouble is going to happen. And the amount of people who have stepped up to help with this and said, no, we need this is pretty amazing.
By the way, that was our park manager who just walked in.
Oh,
She went into her office.
oh, okay.
She's only here on Tuesdays. I'm guessing that somebody must have seen it on TV.
Okay. She's welcome to join us.
And told her to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, happy to invite her down.
Should I ask her to come to join us?
I have a question for you, Senator.
Sure.
Warren. So, excuse me, I'm checking.
That's
my
okay.
notes. Manufactured housing is the largest natural occurring affordable housing in the country. And, of course, it's being squashed by these big corporations. And I was wondering if the Senate has given any thought to prioritizing community land trusts that would help to alleviate this type of corporation coming in and taking over and doing whatever they choose to do.
So it's a great question, and I'm a big fan of community land trusts. But it's not the federal government that puts them in place, but we can change tax structures to encourage investment in one direction or another. So at the federal level, one of the things I'm trying to do is take away the tax breaks from the private equity outfits that come in and buy up your places, in effect, so they're not being subsidized by taxpayers to come wrench profits out of your homes. So that's the direction I've gone with this, but I also want to let my state partners step up on this as well, because community land trusts and other state responses, as you know, real estate is local. And handled at the state and local level. But I want them to be able to step up as well, particularly so that Jim can talk about the bill that he has pending, but other work that may be going on in the legislature.
Well, I'd like to know more about that, and probably both me and Senator Feeney on the Senate side. Between us, Senator Feeney thinks more big picture than me. I worry locally. And you know that I've had my heart here in this building since 2019, and we're working, and I'm glad to share it now with Taunton. The way the bill is written, it can be opted in by any community in the state, and will offer a level of protection from any rent increases or lease changes and make sure they're in compliance with state law. Massachusetts has some of the best state laws in the country, but we know that some parts are not necessarily going along with them. We don't know. They might not be. You can't afford to hire a lawyer every time you get a letter in the mail. So this would offer you the same level, but it's only protection. It doesn't change the system. So I'm sure we would like to get involved in something that would actually change the system as well. That would be better.
You know, I think about at the state level how different states have put in protection, for example, for farmland, so that farmland will be held in trust forever. It changes the tax structure, so you don't get taxed as much. But it also means that the people who are trying to farm can count on the fact that year after year, that's what this land will be set aside for. And these Wall Street corporations can't swoop in and buy it up and turn it into a shopping mall. It's something that certainly, the variation that you're talking about here is the community land trust, the idea that a group of people who live in an area say, we want to hold on to this property for those purposes.
Interesting sidebar on that is the recent MBTA zone ruling. Within a half-mile radius of any commuter rail station is supposed to be a minimum density. And guess what? Next to the South Attleboro train station, we have 3 mobile home parks that would be affected by that. And were that to be replaced with multi-level, multi-family homes, those people could never afford to live there. And I filed legislation. I've reached out to the Department of Housing and Livability Communities, I can't say that word right, on both levels to see if we can't exempt them. It doesn't make any sense to repurpose those into multifamily homes.
Right.
And I think that's if I could, it's kind of a holistic picture, right? When we talk about affordability and being able to stay in our homes, we heard about pensions, right? And defined benefit pensions that have frankly gone the way of the dodo bird over the years, and we're not seeing an increase in, in revenue and income for folks. But then, as the senator led off, she talked about a housing crisis that we have throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I've filed legislation just to look at, what was typically called starter homes, right? Kind of small, 1,300, 1,400 square foot homes on quarter-acre lots that we used to build post-World War II, right? Remember the old Campanelli style?
Yeah.
We
2
don't,
bedrooms, 1 bath.
and we're just not building those. And we're not building those because the return on investment for a lot of these, owners and developers that are coming in, it just isn't there. So working with the mayor, working with local officials to say, what can we do to take kind of a holistic approach to housing so that we can offer a little bit of a pressure relief valve? Thinking about those conversations that you all are having when you see rent increases like that absolutely crushes me. That is, I lived through that with my own family years ago, and it's soul crushing. My question to you is, and the senator let it off perfectly, we should always start with our why, right? We tell our stories because that's what moves and motivates policy. What are those conversations like? I mean, I know you said the for sale signs start to pop up.
Yeah.
When you get that increase, that's 50%, 100%, 200%, what are the options that you are all talking about around your kitchen table to say, are we going in with family, are we selling? And are there options available outside of that, right? The mayor and I were just saying, where do people go, right? Even in a gateway city like Attleboro, where affordability is still a major issue. Does somebody want to kind of weigh in and talk about what those conversations are
Well,
like?
some of those conversations, I would think, as these ladies had said, they're retired. Some of these people go back to work, and they're in their late 60s, early 70s. That's a little bit unreasonable in my mind and difficult to do. And some of the jobs that are offered are, say if you go to Lowe's or you go to Home Depot, you're on your feet. You're working. I mean, it's not like, well, it's office work and I can just pick up a few dollars. No, it's physical, strenuous work, and that's difficult. Or, as you were saying, the alternative is you got to cut back. And then you start to say, well, okay, I'll tighten my belt. On what? If you've got X amount of dollars for your basic fundamentals, there isn't much to cut back on. So what are you faced with? dire things, I think.
If I may, to answer your question, where do you have to go? We don't have an association, where I live in Liberty Estates, we don't have an association. People, it's not that they're not friendly, but they don't want to join any kind of organizations because that's another expense they look at. So we're living in a situation where we don't have options to go to. State housing, 2-3 year waiting list.
Easy.
And any kind of senior housing, Liberty Estates owns 2 parks, one's a family park, and the other is a 55 and above park. That's where we live. So for us, you live in a constant state of anxiety because for years and years and years, Sandcastle was a home-run, owned organization where residents could come in and have a beautiful manufactured home and live the way they had always hoped after working their full lives to live with a little bit of luxury above a regular manufactured home. And you can't do that anymore. So ever since it happened to them, those of us, there are 7, I believe it is, mobile home parks in Attleboro that would be affected. We don't have any protection other than the booklet that we have now from the Attorney General's office. And in that booklet, it says that as individuals or collectively, we have the first right of purchase. But we don't have the first right of purchase because we don't have that kind of collective bargaining power. Right. So we don't have another place to go and still stay in the community that we've helped to support and build through our lives. We either have to go outside of the state or go move in with a relative. As it was pointed out when I attended a meeting in Taunton, that was one of their points that they were telling their residents, tell your children to write a letter because if they don't have a place, if we don't have a place to go, where do you think we're going to go? We're going to move to you to live. And I think that was a great point. But the bottom line is that once you reach a certain age and you downsize to the point where you're living in a manufactured home, that's what you expect to die from and be put in the cemetery from. Because that is the last option of home ownership and at the same time, the least amount of investment you have to make in order to attain that home ownership. Because you don't have that steady job. You don't have all of the frills and things that you once had that you knew you could go out and work 2 extra hours if you had to pay this or you had to pay that. That option is gone. The other option of a place to live. If there were empty homes that were at a reasonable price to either purchase or rent, such as a manufactured home, that you could go and purchase it and not have to be concerned about it being sold out from underneath you, we wouldn't have the anxiety that we're all living with right now. Because there's no base for us to work from or to go to other than where we are now. This is what we can afford to do with the income that we have. If the prices go up more, I know you hear it all the time, and as seniors, we live it all the time, that some people are making choices between medicine and food. And it's not a stretch to say, you're also making a choice between having a roof over your head and medicine and food. Because you have no other options to go to. We rely, and thank goodness we have wonderful senators and state representatives and local government in Attleboro to help us with our problems. But statewide, as difficult as Massachusetts is to break into and get a foothold, they're still doing it. Corporations are still doing it. And the point's already been made that they don't care about us. And it's not like a family-owned business when the kids take over and they decide, well, you know what, we don't want to do this anymore, so we're just going to sell it to the highest bidder because our family has already made their money. We're going to move on to something else. But we need to make some money over this investment that mom and dad did for us. It's not mom and dad who make the bid anymore, it's corporations. And that takes us out of the picture as being the first able to buy.
I would offer, you're making a good point. I wouldn't have known about this if it weren't for Joe and the people from Sandcastle. I would have had no idea. You called me, I think Dell called me down to listen to the story. I said, oh my God, I didn't know about this. And fortunately, I have a very competent staff, and we worked hard to come up with a solution. But this is the only park that has an organization like that. I tried to reach out to some others, and I got individuals, but nobody could work together. I couldn't meet with a group of people at any other park. It just doesn't exist. And we're fortunate to get somebody like Jeannie in Taunton, Joe, Walter, who are vocal about the situation. But the responsibilities at this table, the people sitting at this table, now that we know, we need, and I mean everybody, including you, and I appreciate your support, we need to come up with a plan to protect these people and keep them in their homes.
More that we should hear? Anyone? Yeah.
Very little individual readiness of what you just said is excellent. But for more than 1 year, we live at the end of a cul-de-sac. For the last 4 lights, one came on a few months ago, then it was the last 3 lights, have been out. Not an issue for most of the year, but in the winter when there's ice and snow, last year was easy, thank God. But several complaints by several people are bored. The little group that gets together and talks with the manager, several individuals, my husband and I won, and some of our neighbors. It was a safety issue. So it's little, but it's not little, because it's a safety issue. So after a year, it finally just came on. But after, you have to wear them out, because they're trying to wear you out. You have to be consistent, persistent. So,
Right. That's helpful. Thank you. Anyone else want to add? Please.
Hi, I'm Catherine Slowey.
Yes.
And I live in Sandcastle, and I'm a board member. The issue that I would like to bring up is the fact that within the parks and Parks Committee, it has been brought up that when you have, I should go back. When the park was built, there was no conduit for wiring underneath the ground for the wires. And what's transpiring now is within the park and throughout the park, and I think it's going to occur, we're having power failures. And I'm finding, and I believe that the board is too, the Parks Committee, that sometimes it's not as timely completed as quickly as it should be. For example, where I live, there are 6 houses on the same power grid, and one was done a while ago, and 2 of us are now waiting, and it happened over Memorial Day weekend at my house, and it was prior to that for the other house, and the dig stage people have come out, and we're just waiting for some action. So I know that the Parks Commission has brought it up, and it's safety because the wires are out, on the ground, and people want to walk around in their backyard and garden or do whatever, and so I just that's a legitimate issue.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a point on Catherine's issue that, the people who owned the park before could have replaced all those and gotten it fixed. But they didn't, So they just make a quick $5 million profit on the park, and then they leave the issue there for the next one to come along. And, churning the park over for $5 million each time, I suppose they expect to make that money back. They can say, well, this is part of our mortgage now, you have to pay it. So we're getting stuck with, all the things they didn't take care of, but also the extra expense of the higher bill they have to pay for their big loan. It doesn't seem fair.
And of course, when that sale occurs, it changes the so-called market value, which in turn means every other park anywhere in the region, the value of it has gone up, and everybody gets into the business of churning the ownership of these parks. And as you rightly say,
And the rent, not the real estate, obviously. 'Cause
yeah,
there's no way this land is worth $19 million. It's the rents that are worth the money.
yeah, yeah.
Well, when I walk past Catherine's house, I do notice what you talked about is her electric wiring is in conduit on top of the ground that you have to step over, because I went to deliver something to her.
Was that legal?
That was, you have to step over to go to her back door. And I was like, what is this? And I could see that it went to the back, and I know the problems that have been going on with the electricity. Luckily, it hasn't happened to me, but I do. For me, when the winter comes, this is going to be horrendous, because right now she has a conduit this big, with the wires going through, going across the driveway, down the back to wherever it goes to, and she says there's other houses. The chances of somebody tripping on that, to me, is very high, looking at the age of the people. And what's going to happen when there's snow on top of that?
So they did that because the original wire was underground and not protected by a conduit. It was
Partly that, and partly that they were shorting out from the meter board to the units.
Yep.
So they had to replace the wires. And in
So
a
this is
situation like that,
temporary,
they have to put the wires in
long-
conduit until the city inspector and the electrician that put those wires in say, okay, great, it's done, meets code. I believe this is going on 6 months. We meet with the manager every month and say, when is this going to be taken out of the conduit, because the cable is approved to be buried in the ground. When is that going to be done? 6 months going on.
Wow.
And that's not unusual.
If I could I just add a couple things?
Please.
First of all, I want to say that what the issues that Walt brought up about no other places to move to if you have to leave this place, I think that's true of all these parks in the whole state. Okay, there were 7 in Attleboro, 7 in Taunton. I think there's got to be over 100 in the state. I don't know the exact number, but I think everybody has those kind of issues. Another one, I'm not sure if it's been brought up, but we're also an over 55 park. So a lot of widows and a few widowers. So people when they moved here, they had 2 Social Securities. One of the spouses has passed away, now there's only one. So that just makes a bigger struggle. But I think it's very common. A number of people have moved because they're unable to afford the increases in the rent anymore. On the other hand, I will say that because we have an organization and because we have a park manager who we can actually speak to her, we meet with her periodically and she responds, we do get things done. Some of the things that we brought up, we're actually seeing progress. So we're actually, I think, in that regard, maybe luckier than those in other parks, because a lot of them have nobody to talk to. And then just one other thing, I think that when Legacy bought Sandcastle, it was their first foray into New England. It was their first park. I think they were previously in Florida and Arizona and the Southwest. So, but I think it's been successful because they now own, well, at least 5 parks that we know about. And they have attempted to buy a couple of others, but somehow those residents were able to buy it themselves. There were 2 parks they tried to buy in Plainville. They're now resident owned.
Yeah. But this goes back to the point we were talking about. But the very fact of buying and then rolling it over for a big increase means they can get a lot, they can buy but then get a lot more money as they just keep churning, and that increases the expenses for all of the tenants.
Yes, yeah.
Even though nothing has really changed. Please.
In our park, it's 158 units, and in base rent, we pay almost $80,000 a month. That's what, when you multiply it up, it's $80,000 a month. And then we also pay all our pass-throughs, which is the real estate, the water and gas expenses. So, they make a pretty penny, they really do.
Their property.
Their property is.
Well, you can tell that from how much they can get by rolling it over. As you say, it's the rents, it's not the land. Madam Mayor, you didn't get a chance to weigh in. Was there anything you wanted to add here?
Well, mobile home parks, these folks have heard my story. They are near and dear to my heart for personal reasons and political and other reasons. That my mother lives in a mobile home in Rhode Island, so this is very much an issue on my mind. But I'm a big fan because not only are they affordable, they're also environmentally friendly. And the fact that the country had a chance maybe 30 years ago when these first came out, right, they were booming. And then they took a sharp turn because of transportation costs. We need to revive manufactured homes and make them not just homes for older people, but for everybody. These are great ways to access homes for all people across all income levels. So I think we need to just change the discourse on them and add more everywhere. I would personally like to have a municipal mobile home park. It's something I've talked about with the city planner because we could buy quite a few of them at much less than we could build homes here. And they're much more environmentally friendly. So I appreciate your time. This is an issue that I've visited these people several times with the health inspector and other people because I feel like they need to be seen and heard across all levels. So I am grateful for your attention to this matter.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor has been very
Add anything?
If I can add,
Please,
Senator.
of course.
As I think about this meeting and the hard work that Jim has put into, and the senator into the legislation, and you're here, the hard work that Jim has put in, you're busy to get you here, but it doesn't end here. We're not going to say, okay, Senator, you're here you go. You take care of it, you fix it, you make it better for us. It is so important for you to, and I don't need to tell you this, but I'll say it anyway, for you to continue the action and the activity that you're doing at the local level in big and small ways in order to move this mountain, because it is a growing mountain that we are confronting as a society, and the importance that there is attached to taking care of our aging population. We're living on this earth longer. We're spending more time here, and we have an obligation to take care of one another and to take care of our elderly. So it is soldiering on.
Good.
I'm going to thank your staff.
They are good.
They
They
are
work hard.
They are good.
They are good. There's Caleb back there.
They hear from me so much, and they are always.
But they're always happy to.
Always did a nice reception and a great constructive conversation.
Good.
Elizabeth, I just want to pile on too, and look, you all have had your voices heard because Jim's been leading on this, and now Senator Warren, who just does incredible work for working class and working class people throughout the country on a daily basis. I have an interesting role in the state Senate where I serve as the chair of financial services, and trust me when I say that we see a lot of banks and insurance folks and wealth management, and everything is about balance sheets and profits and maximizing those revenues. And to be here and to have Senator Warren, listen to your stories and to tell your stories that there's real people behind those spreadsheets, that there's real people that are making tough decisions, I think is just a testament to definitely your leadership and activism and our state delegation and the mayor, and of course Senator Warren, who I know is going to take this back and do everything she can and work with us to help. So thank you all for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for telling the stories. Thank you for laying out kind of the overall lay of the land and how this has unfolded to this point. Look, I know how frustrating this is, and I know how frightening it is. every June. But we've got a lot of tools among us. Some of them are going to take some new pieces, some creativity. Some of them are slow to come and to be felt. But at the end of the day, you've got terrific people here in Massachusetts who are showing leadership on this. I'm going to keep pushing at the federal level on the corporate investment here and the tax advantaging of it and the fact that they can hide their financials, and those are the areas I'm going to keep digging in on, and I am just as tenacious as you are. You cannot wear me out on these issues, and that's what we'll do together. We'll just keep working on it literally at every level until we make this better, because people should be able to count on their homes as a place where they are secure and where they can stay as long as they want to stay. So thank you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you.